Today I am so excited to talk to Amy Poeppel, and Amy's debut novel is Small Admissions. And thank you so much, not only for being here, but for sending me this book. I was so thrilled to get it. And look at it, it's signed. She signed it for me, which I was just so ecstatic about. That was so awesome. Thank you. You know, when I asked you to send it, I was in Dallas. It was over Hurricane Harvey.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I sent that to you, I'm like, can you send me the book? Because I was like, I felt so out of it, and I wanted to read it when I got back, and I didn't have time to order it, and I was like, can you please just send it to me? And you did, and I was so happy. Thank you.
I'm from Dallas originally.
Oh, you are. I have 2 children that live in Anna.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you do in the hurricane? Everybody okay?
Yeah, it didn't really, it was dark when we were there, but then who knew that, Irma was not, my brother was in Florida. If we thought Harvey was something to worry about, Irma was crazy last week, but yeah. So, yeah, I was like traveling a lot, and I was just like, can you just please send me your book? And you did, and I was so happy that you did. And I have to tell you, so today, for me, when this airs, it'll be a different time, but it is Thursday. 3 days in a row, I have interviewed people about his World War II. So I was like, when I woke up this morning, I'm like, oh, I get to talk about fun stuff. This book is so much fun, Amy. It is so much fun.
Oh, good. And it's a book about interviewing, so it stays in your...
It really does.
Of what you've been thinking about these days. So
yeah, and I really love that. There are so many people out there, and I promote nonfiction and historical fiction. I love that, but I also love that I get to read like a novel. I'm glad that that is still a thing, because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't read novels anymore. And I used to be one of those people like a couple of years ago, like I don't have time to read novels. But man, they are so like beneficial to us to like escape into this other world. And it's like your book reminded me of that I can escape into a book and not think about horrible stuff that happened to me.
So my worst habit, recently has been I've just sort of become a cable news addict. And the thing is that if you listen to cable news, you hear the same thing. You get sort of the message, and then you kind of get a replay of the message, and then a replay. And after a while, I don't think it's good for your brain. I think it's upsetting, and it gets you worked up about stuff, and I just don't find that I feel good after watching way too many hours of the news. I think it's better to watch 30 minutes of the news and then sit down with a novel.
Yes.
Because reading fiction, I agree with you completely. I think it's so beneficial. I feel good. I literally feel good the way I do after I exercise or after, I eat a salad or something.
Yeah, something good for yourself,
Good for my brain. I'm reading Fiona Davis's book right now, The Address, which is fantastic. It's historical fiction, but there's an element that's present day as well, and it's about the Dakota in New York City.
Yeah.
So it's about the Dakota as it was being built and when it first opened in the late 1800s. And then there's this 1980s story at the same time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Back and forth from my college days to way back, to the 19th century, and it's just intriguing, and you get so excited to return to it. You put the book down, and then you sort of think, oh, I can't wait to get back to the book and find out what's going to happen. I think that's what good fiction does for me.
Absolutely.
It occupies the best part of my brain, healthy.
It really is. And like I said, we kind of forget. We get caught up in some of the, and of course, in our country, like, what did we just go through? We went through 2 massive hurricanes. We went through the news talking about it nonstop. I was watching more news than I ever did to make sure everybody was okay. And, I swear my Hurricane Center link was up on the top of my, watching hurricanes. It's crazy. And it's not, and then I'd go back to reading your book, and I'm like, it's all okay. It's all okay. But, okay, what I loved, I have so many elements, and there are no spoilers. Anybody who's listening, I do not do spoilers. I like everybody to read it and love it as much as me. But I have to tell you things that I absolutely loved about this book. First of all, your writing is amazing. I loved how you switched, I loved how the story kept moving forward with letters, emails, texting.
Yeah.
And I think about that because, you guys who are writing like present day novels, like, that is our life, and the way you handled it and actually used it, to move the story instead of just like, hey, what are you doing today? Nothing, like our boring.
The world of admissions is so correspondence driven, and I think our personal lives are very text driven. It's all and social media driven. So I couldn't leave that part out, especially because I worked in admissions for several years, and so much of what we learn about the child is from the interview, of course, but a lot of it is what we're hearing from somebody else. And so to get those letters of recommendation in there and to get grade reports, or even, and this was the most fun for me to write, was the essays written by the actual children, which was so much fun to write. Right. It's just, I think it's fun as a novelist to get to think, how can I inform my readers about a character in a lot of different ways so that they're not just getting one view of them. And that's really what we did in admissions all the time, was how could we find out who this child is with all these different puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
And to get to put those together. And for me, above all, both when I was working in admissions and when I was teaching and when I'm mothering, but especially when I'm writing fiction, it's finding humor in stuff that maybe doesn't even seem all that funny when it's happening. But I love to find the funny in any situation.
Oh my gosh, from your first chapter, I was cracking up. Okay. And I have to tell you, so I not only read your book, but I listened to it too. And yes. I forgot to look up, I wanted to look up who the narrator was, because she was awesome, whoever did it.
And do you know that, speaking of social media and the crazy world that we live in, we are now friends. I found out, I did a book trailer for Small Admissions that you can actually find on YouTube.
Yes, I saw that.
Yes. There's a little clip. And that was done with, I had written that scene because this was first to play when I originally started writing this. And I took this little scene and I kind of reworked it and really tried to shorten it and make it as tight as I could. And I asked a friend of mine if he would be willing to act in it. And he had done the original staged reading that we did at the Actors Studio in New York. So he said, sure. And I said, I'm looking for a child. And he said, I have a child. And I said, okay, that's great. Asked another friend of mine, Liz Lee, if she would do it. So I had my 3 actors. The actor, Albert, took some pictures on set and posted them on Facebook and said, we just had the best time shooting this trailer for this book that my friend wrote. It's called Small Admissions. And this girl gets on and goes, oh, how funny. I just narrated a book called Small Admissions. And the two of them went to theater school together.
Wow.
Just total coincidence. So I got to know Carly through my friend Albert. Small world. It's crazy. And she is lovely. And she has such a great sense of humor, which is why I think she read well. You know, she really.
She did. And, you know, I'm really fascinated by, I've been doing a lot of audiobooks lately. A lot. And
yes.
It is such I'm really appreciating the art of narrating. Yeah. And it really, like, it does your book so much justice because her voice is for the different characters, because I'm kind of carrying it around with me because, you know, what I'm doing, and I got to get a lot of books in, but, you know, I'm carrying it around when I'm not reading, I'm carrying it. And I was like, I knew who she was doing. I knew the voice that she was doing. I didn't have to like say, oh, wait a second, back up. What is she talking about? Like, I knew it from the way that she expressed every character, you know. So, and it really helps your books because there are a lot of audiobook people out there. And we want to, you know, they want to be entertained. We want to be entertained. And she did a great job with the accent, the French accents, you know, everything. She was amazing.
It's a great way to use time that you can't use any other way. Like when you're in a car, I find I am perfectly able to focus on driving and really pay attention, but I love listening to a book, an audiobook while I'm driving. I just feel like I'm using my time so well. I'm so entertained.
Yes.
I'm listening to Matthew Clam's book, Who is Rich? Speaking of funny, it's dark funny, and it's wonderful. It's beautifully written. And I tend to do audiobooks in the car, and I just read books on my own. So I'm trying to sit here and think, when can I get back in the car? Because I want to get back.
I want to listen to. I know, and we're women. We're multitaskers. You know, I'm cooking breakfast for my son this morning. I'm listening to a book. I mean, I'm doing laundry. I'm listening to a book. So it makes us feel that much more productive. That's what I think. So anyway, okay. Other things I love about your book. Let's get back to talking about your awesome book. Do you have a sister?
I do. I have 2 sisters. I'm the baby.
Because I knew you had 3 sons, so I was like, okay, so she's not writing it as the mom. I do not have a sister, but I have 2 daughters. And I have 6 children, and they're all, they're age range. But my middle 2 are my daughters. And as I'm reading the dynamic between these sisters, I was like, she nailed this. I mean, she knows, because my daughters will come to me and be like, I'm worried about her. I'm worried about her. And they want me to take them very seriously. Mom, seriously, we need to do something. And then the other one will come and be like, I don't know about, her boyfriend. We really, we got to do something about this. And I'm always like, okay, we'll do some. Bye.
I'm unbelievably close with my sisters. We're really close. And I would not say that Angela is based on either of my sisters, but I do think that we baby sisters have sort of a feeling that we're being judged all the time. And so I just thought it would be so much fun to actually write a character where the older sister is judging. So it's not just that the younger sister feels she's being judged, but to actually have a judgy older sister, I thought would be so much fun. But also a good heart. I'm sure you see this with your girls. Even when they're coming and saying, oh, I'm really worried, they're really worried. Like their heart is in the right place.
Oh, yeah.
And I think sibling relationships are so interesting. I'm sure you see this with your 6. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, I have like a tribe of them. But the funny thing about it is that very rarely, except for the exception of my son who edits these videos, and will probably be listening to this, he's the oldest, right? Let's just take him out of the equation, because I do think oldest children have a tendency to worry about he'll come to me about some of the younger ones. But you have 3 sons. How often do your 3 sons come and say, you know what? His girlfriend, I'm really worried about him. Like, they just don't stay out of each other's business so much.
Right.
That, it's
the most I usually get is, yeah, she's cool. What do you think of her? She's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very different relationship. And with boys, I think as they get older, it's so much easier with boys in terms of their relationships with each other, because they're not just attacking each other and physically rolling around on the floor anymore. At least, I am happy. I don't know about you. I'm happy that phase is over.
My oldest 2 sons they were really, not my youngest 2, but there was a little bit more age difference. But yeah, I mean, that part is over. But that's what I was thinking with this book. I'm like, you can't really write this for men, because boys don't really do that. And they don't really they don't sit there and say, oh, I'm really concerned, Mom, you need to do, that call doesn't happen. But my daughters, it's a regular, Mom, what do you think? What do you think? And it's kind of weird because of the dynamic of the 2 of them and me. We're like a 3, which, has its own dynamic. We're like a threesome.
Right. Well, there's something maternal in that. I think that there's something maternal that happens between an older sister and a younger sister. And then when they bring the mom in, I think there's room for someone getting defensive, because it's like, that's my job, that should be the one who's worrying. And as a little sister, I had a mom. I think the last thing a little sister wants is to feel like they're being mothered by another mother figure. You already got one of those, so you don't need 2. But that was a lot of fun to do the sibling thing. And I think the other relationship that fascinates me, and I think partly just because of since we're the same age and our kids are growing up, to see what happens when you are parenting an adult child.
Yes.
I'm super intrigued by that. So I just like this idea of these parents kind of taking off and leaving their daughters to fend for themselves, because why wouldn't they? Their daughters are perfectly grown up enough to take care of themselves. But adult kids need their own kind of parenting, I think.
I think so too.
They do, or sometimes we as parents think they do, and we don't always all agree on that point. So I think there's room for humor in that too.
Absolutely. I have grandchildren because my older children had children young, so I have grandchildren. And my granddaughter, who's 4, said she was telling me that she got punished and she got something taken away. And I was in my brain, I'm like, oh, I can get that back for you. And then I'm like, wait, what if I can't get that back for? Like, what if that's not possible? My son might not be happy about me interfering, but, we're always the mom like, oh, he did what? What did he do? Like, he took away your toy? Are you kidding me?
Right. Exactly. And it must be really interesting to take on this new role of grandma. That must be really grandma, right?
Yeah, grandma. Yeah, it's really fun. But I have a 14-year-old that I'm still parenting, so I'm many roles, and who would have thought? And like you said, there's no nobody tells you how to be. Like we, doing diapers and all that. That's very instinctual. But as they grow older, it's like I don't know what to do. I try not to step on toes. I try not to, say too much. But then they'll come to me with stuff, and I'm like, okay, am I supposed to interfere because they came to me, or am I? I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic, of what to interfere in and what to not. But but I love that what I love is the same thing. Like I told you, 2 of my children are in Dallas, so they're pretty far. And, but I love when she goes to the dad at one point and she's like, you don't understand, I'm concerned. And he's like, okay, honey, gotta go, doing something, and she's like, what? What about me? What about?
Right. Yes. And I like this idea of having the parents I wanted to sort of not do the opposite, which was to have parents who were very involved and who were meddling. I wanted the opposite of meddling parents. I wanted parents who felt our time has come. They're grown up enough. We can actually go off and do things that we couldn't do while we were raising kids. And I thought retirement age for a while, I thought they might just be up. And I thought, no, I want them to be intellectually engaged with what they're doing so that they really could compartmentalize their children in this box of we don't need to be addressing this right now. Right. And yet just really loving parents. I didn't want in any way for their involvement in their own careers, which I think this is another thing that's just interesting to me, since we're all sort of living a very long time these days, and especially I think for women, we get to have sort of different chapters of our lives.
Exactly.
I've had so many different careers and different phases of my life where I have focused on different things. And so I liked this idea of sort of empty nesting to the extreme, of sort of saying my kids are out of college now, they're grown up, and have these parents who could really focus on themselves and their careers and their traveling and just to see how the children could feel abandoned, which is funny because they're too old to feel abandoned.
Right, but they still do.
But they do.
They still do. And I am good about carrying my phone around with me. Yeah. I'm really good because that's my thing to communicate with everybody. But if my one daughter, if I get a text from her and I'm doing this, right?
Yeah.
I just got 5. What are you doing?
Right.
Why aren't you picking up? What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing? And it's so funny because they know me so well that they know that I will, but it's like I'm busy. I have this thing I'm doing right now that I'm having fun. Okay, I'll get to you.
We just switched because I used to really get mad at them if they didn't answer me, and they would laugh because I would send 10 question marks.
Yes. Where are you? Where are you? Answer me.
Answer me. And now they do the same thing to me, which I think is so funny. If I go take a walk and I don't bring my phone with me, which rarely happens, but I have done this before, I've just up and blown the coop. And then that's when I come back and I'll have those 12.
They're like, I'm worried about you, Mom. I'm worried. Where are you? I know, it's very fun. But I also, another thing I loved about your book was the title, because we know that she gets a job in the admissions office, right? So I was trying to, as I'm reading, I'm always like, I love when authors pick these titles that I'm just intrigued by. They're not blatant, Kate. They're not they're like, and I was realizing as I'm reading this, is what's awesome about Kate is she's 25, okay? She's young, and she's got this job, and she's interviewing kids, and in her interviewing these kids, she starts, spilling the beans about her life, and almost, trying to get advice from, and then also, having these admitting things about herself, and it's crazy. I'm telling you, Amy, that is what I was cracking up during those interview sessions that she had with the kids. They were amazing.
How inappropriate could she go without it completely outrageous.
Yes.
But I do, especially when I started interviewing, and that I really chose, because I interviewed, when I worked there, I interviewed kids 6 through 12, grades 6 through 12. And a lot of books have been written about the kindergarten admissions process in places like New York and how insane all of that is. And I just didn't want to sort of repeat that, because it wasn't as much in an area where I felt really comfortable talking about it, because I haven't done as much of that sort of thing of watching groups of children, and then you see one little 5-year-old hit the other one on the head and take the toy and run away. And I think that stuff is hilarious.
Yes.
But I didn't want to go there, because I wanted kids who were more aware of what this process is of being interviewed. But I also didn't want them to be the high school kids, because they're too aware. The 10-year-old kids are perfect. They were perfect for me, because they can prepare, and some of them can over-prepare, and some of them can be very poised and very fake in their. They've actually developed that skill of acting, really, of acting. Wow. And some of them are completely unrehearsed and unprepared. And working in admissions is just so much fun, because you don't know what's going to walk into the office. Are you going to get one of these kids who really is just ready to be interviewed and ready to go? Or are you going to get one of these funny, goofy boys who can't sit still in their chair and who say things that their mothers would die if they knew that they said this in an interview? Those were the moments that I liked the most. And I thought, well, if you've got that going on, and if you also have a young woman interviewing them who really doesn't quite know what her job is yet and doesn't know how to do it well, so self-absorbed with her own stuff, that she brings that in as well. Then you've got the kid admitting to the fact that he hates math, and you've got Kate admitting to the fact that, her boyfriend, ex-fiancé, dumped her. And I just picture the kids, like how they would react to getting information that's, not really for their ears necessarily. So it was a lot of fun. The interview scenes were really, really fun to write. I got such a kick out of it.
And I knew I was going to like you by reading those interview scenes. Okay. I was like, this woman has a sense of humor. Okay. Because it was hysterical. They were just, I started looking forward to when she was interviewing,
Yeah.
Like I started to, and what's crazy is that by interviewing, it was kind of like counseling for her, because she was growing through these interviews and like talking about herself, and then thinking, kind of being introspective, like, telling a 10-year-old your story, you're like, and then having their feedback, and she's like, maybe that.
Even the girl who's hard on her,
right.
She interviewed that girl Annie, and Annie's sort of like, and she's angry at first, but then she processes it a little bit. And so going back to the personal for a minute, my youngest son is 17, and he's about to go through the college admissions process.
Yes, I have one too. Yeah.
It's exhausting. And I just went through this with my older 2 kids. And then, I worked in admissions, and I've been thinking so much about, the relationship between, my kid has some schools he really wants to go to. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to get this message across to him that if they don't want you, it's probably not a good fit, because they should see what you bring and what you have to offer, and they should think, wonderful. And if they don't think that, maybe it's not a very good school for you. So I like sort of flipping the tables a little bit.
Right.
And that's what I tried to do. Because I actually remember the first time, I think I was I was about halfway through college, and I was dating this guy who had really been hard on me. He was really critical of me all the time. And I went off and did my first semester of my junior year in Europe. I went off to Europe, and I was very independent and spending all this time by myself, and really traveling alone, which makes you just so steely, especially back when there was no GPS.
Right.
And you had your little
map
tour, your little map. Came to visit. And when he came to visit, he started doing little critical jabs at me, and I was not having it. I just was like, I just got my spine, and I just was like, No, I don't actually. It was not that I was constantly like trying to fit what this person wants. I suddenly thought, no, you don't fit what I want.
Right.
It was so freeing to kind of have that realization that you're criticized. I don't want someone who's criticizing me all the time. I don't like that.
Right.
I don't want that in my life. And I see how that fits with school admissions at the same time. If you try to fit yourself into a box, it's not the right place for you.
Right.
It's not, oh, I'm so depressed I got rejected. It's, well, then I don't want that school. And that's what I tried, no spoilers again. But that was the message that I really wanted Kate to deliver to some of these rather distraught families. And we do get distraught families. In
Hers were a little extreme.
Yeah. A little extreme. Usually not that extreme. Like, where I thought to myself, I hope people are stable,
Right.
But I did just really enjoy I've sort of enjoyed going through the college process this last time around, because I keep saying to my child, well, it needs to work on both sides. And if it doesn't, you didn't want that school anyway. If they don't appreciate you, you didn't want that school anyway. It's not the right place. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. And I'm just thinking about my 17-year-old. Well, he's now 18, but it's his senior year. And, it's what month? September. And I'm like, so where do you want to go start looking for schools? Where I can play golf. Okay. Because he's in the golf team. So with him, it's like, well, what do you want to do with your life? Play golf? Oh,
okay. Let's find that.
I know, but the school did this like test on him. He goes to a private school, and they did a test, and they came back and said that he would be a good physical therapist. And he was like, maybe. And I'm like, no, you should go with that. Like, you took a test. You should, go with that.
And it sort of makes sense with golf. Right. I feel like those two things can go nicely together. Athletes.
But, there again, he is my 5th child. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I think you should play golf. That's good. Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fell in love with Kate. I mean, you did it from so many different vantage points. Let's talk about, because we could talk forever, and, I could talk to you forever. But when you were doing that, when you're writing that, I saw this interview that you did. It was in print, actually. And somebody asked you, like, what kind of advice do you have for people who are just starting out? And you gave the funniest response. So I'd like you to share your response to, what you think of new writing.
What did I say? Oh,
okay,
no.
You said something like, I didn't write it down, but you were like, get an editor, cry, or, hate them,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It was like the 5 stages of grief, and then get up and do what they say.
And then, I had no idea. I mean, I was an English major in college, and I knew, of course, from writing analytical essays that a lot of rewriting is involved. But I don't think I realized quite the degree of it and how freeing it can be, because it means you can go ahead and just sit down and write stuff, and then just be open to the criticism that you will get. And that's fine. Like, it doesn't mean anything except that some people out there are trying to help you write a better book.
Right.
That's when I really realized it's not criticism, it's your team. This is your team trying to help you get this book in the best shape that it can possibly be in. And then that sort of removes any defensive quality that you might, walk into that feeling. I've had friends who have said to me, I have this draft, and I've always said, I believe in experts. I'm a huge fan of experts in all areas of my life. I think experts it's what they train to do in whatever, I don't care if it's your plumbing or if it's your book. You need an expert. So hire, don't ask your best friend. Your best friend can read it and be sweet to you, and that's awesome too. But that's not what you need. You need to pay. It's expensive. It costs money, but it's worth every penny to pay someone who's a professional to be really hard on you, because they can see your book in a way that you're too close to it. You just can't see it yourself. And that's when I said, just take those comments and go to bed for a minute and process it and feel angry if you want to feel angry. I have definitely gone through that as well. And then it's sort of like what you were saying with Kate. Process it a little bit. Look at that criticism and think, could I have done things differently? Would that be better if I wrote this chapter in this way instead? And then just get back to work.
Instead of being like, she just doesn't get me. She doesn't know what I want from this book. But, a lot of people that, are trying to write books, they think that they read a book like yours and they're like, oh, well, she just sat down. She wrote this book. Woke up a month later, has this national best-selling book. Look at how awesome she is, And you see that with self-published books. And I'm not picking sides because I interview a lot of self-published authors. But I do see, because I read so much, that when they're trying to make something tighter, some people need it tighter. And I think that's what editors try to do. Make it tight, make the story go tighter. Not that your book isn't good, it's just that it could use a little bit more flow to it.
Right.
And,
And so much of it is trusting that your readers are paying attention. You think when you're doing your first draft and you don't have your audience as clearly in your head yet, you think, well, they don't know this and they don't know this, and I better retell them this, and I better make sure that I drive that point home.
Right.
That's stuff that can all go later. Maybe it needs to be in that first draft. Maybe even half of it needs to be in the second draft. But by the fifth draft, you realize my reader got that. They're smart. Readers are smart. They're paying attention.
And sometimes it is. It's like beating a dead horse. It's like, I know, she's the sister. I get that.
Exactly.
I know she's that sister. And, so I was thinking, as I'm reading this book reminded me of Bridget Jones's Diary.
Oh, fun. I love that.
I know. That's how hysterical. Just so I want everybody to understand, how hysterical. I could so see this, and, who knows? Maybe somebody will pick it up. It'll be a movie. I can only hope. But that's the kind of humor that I saw in this. And going back and forth between these characters, how detailed were your outlines? I always am interested in knowing that. Because some people are like, oh, I just wrote it. I didn't have any outlines. I let the characters speak for themselves. But in this kind of thing, when you're using emails, you're using text messages, you're switching voices, there's got to be some heavy-duty outlining going on.
I don't know if I would call it outlining as much as I would call it 1,000 really terrible versions of this book that came before this book. Because it did start as a play. So it started with these parent interviews, and then I sort of laced this story that was the Kate story in between them. And I liked the idea of sort of these unrelated or seemingly unrelated interviews to end up being really relevant to the story. When you go to the Actors Studio and you do a staged reading, which I was fortunate enough to get to do. This was an amazing experience.
That is so cool.
It was so...
In case people don't know what that is, it's a very cool thing,
It was really exciting, and I got to tell you, it is so tough because there's an audience there. They're all members of the Playwrights Actors Net of the Actors Studio. And the point is the critique afterwards. The point isn't just for everybody to stand and clap and say how wonderful it was. The point is that afterwards there's a discussion. And it is a tough discussion. And what I really walked away with, there was so much criticism, which again, it's fine. Go to bed for 3 days, and take it in. But that's the beauty of it, is that then you can go back. And the only thing that I wish was that I could have replayed it. I didn't have a recording of the discussion afterward. But I certainly took enough notes during the discussion to realize that they liked the interviews. They liked the parents. The Kate story did not work at all. So I sat with it for about 3 or 4 months and sort of thought, what is it about the Kate story that's wrong? One of the number one criticisms, it's repetitive. And I remember one woman said, oh my God, you said the same thing 100 times. Right. It was really hard to hear. And it was true. It was true. She was right. I had drilled the same point home way too many times. And that's at the expense of the audience. They start to get irritated. And it's the same with readers. They start to get irritated if you're not trusting them to be keeping up with you.
Right.
That was such a good lesson for me. So at that point, I had an agent who had been working on another story that I had spent about 10 years writing. It's actually my Texas story. It's a novel that I wrote about Texas. And I worked on that book. I'm not even joking. I think I worked on that book for about 10 years. the last year I worked on it with an editor. And at the end of that year, we decided it's just not happening. It's just not going anywhere. And the agent said, I can't sell this. What else do you have up your sleeve? And that was hard to hear, obviously. Since that happened, I've been meeting more and more authors, as you do. And it's fascinating to me how many authors say they have an unpublished book.
Oh.
The book
I talk to so many that, it's like debut doesn't mean that you haven't written anything other than that. And I have to tell you, Amy, just because of what I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, your book is getting a lot of attention. I mean, I knew it right from that, and of course, like, I'm a cover person, and I thought it was a really cute cover. But I was like, oh my God, people are like, I love this book, and I'm like, I need to read this book, and I want to talk to her, and so you are so blessed in that. But it's not like what is Kevin Hart always says? Oh, I was such an overnight success for 10 years. It's not overnight success. You put the work in, and then you get this, and then you get that kind of feedback, and you get an amazing book that you can be out there and so proud of, and and
patience, and trust the experts, take the criticism. It's all good. I'd rather have criticism from editors along the way and have readers who enjoy the book more than stick to some vision that you think is so
important.
And you can't write a book by yourself. You can't. Maybe some people can. Hats off to authors who do this kind of thing by themselves. I need help. I love to admit that I need help because it's a team. It's really a team effort. And in terms of what you were asking me about the outline and all that sort of thing, I sort of took that draft and wrote another draft, and then I worked with this amazing freelance editor who just helped me and helped me and helped me. And she would say, this piece is in the wrong place, and can you think about how I'm losing this character? Can you think about how we could change that? So I would say it was sort of an upside down way of doing an outline. Right. But as you said, when you've got that many moving pieces, I did at times sit down with pages on the floor and literally just rearrange things and figure what needs to go where. I'm trying with this new book that I'm working on to do an outline. It's a new thing for me. I'm trying to actually plan out more in advance because my next book, Limelight, is coming out in May.
That was my next question. So, yeah.
And I wrote that book without an outline, which is fine, but I probably threw out 200 pages of writing which is fine. That's one way to do it. It's an enormous amount of work that, again, I think teaches you how to write. But I wondered if for the next book that I'm working on, if maybe I could plan a little bit more ahead and not throw out 200 pages of writing. Yeah. I don't know that, I don't think it's a shortcut. I think it's just a different way of ending up at the same place. Yeah. But I'm curious to see if I could be a planner as opposed to, what do they call it, a pantser.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is people, I find, just because I do these a lot, is that people will be like, I'm such a pantser. And then later they come back and be like, yeah, so that worked for a book or two. And then I realize if I want to write more and then not throw away so much, that the tighter the outline, the easier the story. You know? And it doesn't say you can't change in the middle or anything like that, but it does give you a definite way to think, a little bit more coherently. But, but when does Limelight come out?
So Limelight should be out May of 2018.
Okay.
I just got my first editorial notes back, so I'm in that phase of I'm going to just buckle down and get to work on the big set of changes that I'm going to make. And it's a book about a woman with 3 kids who's just moved to New York. And it's hard for me to talk about this book without doing spoilers, but I will just say that simultaneously it's a book about Broadway and about a big pop star who has been cast in a big Broadway show. And the Broadway show is a musical remake of Charlie Chaplin's Limelight. And it's a belligerent, spoiled, really poorly behaved pop star who's entering this kind of dignified world of Broadway and just seeing how he can figure it out and whether or not the show will be a success. It's been a lot of fun to work on. I have absolutely loved every minute of it.
Aw. Well, if you ever need a reader, I do that a lot.
Absolutely.
I read for, you can always send me, whatever things. I would love, yeah, I would love to do that. I'm finding I'm doing that more because I'm meeting you guys. And, I didn't even realize there was such a thing. I didn't even know that they have, like, people that do test reading and, and it's so much fun. I love it because I read so much. So.
Absolutely. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to get to see books before they actually come out and kind of be in the know, and also to help generate buzz for the books. And we writers do that for each other, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Reviews are so important, and there's the whole that part of the marketing part of it. But, yeah, if you ever need anybody, you know where to find me. So
absolutely.
Anyway, everybody, Amy Poeppel, and here is her book.
Thank you.
So awesome. Thank you so much for talking to me today, Amy. I'm so happy to get to know you. And, we'll put this up, and I'll have your links under here so people can find the book. And I can't wait to read your next book. Can't wait.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Yes. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.